I can edit bits out.
That's okay.
Just tell me which bits you want edited out. If
He hasn't got those rights. Don't worry about that, Andrew. He hasn't got those rights.
I don't want anything edited out at all.
you want the truth to come out.
Yeah, there's no bad bits from my side, so
There isn't. That is true. That is true. That is
Lovely.
true.
Lovely. We're good to get going, boys?
Yep.
yeah.
Awesome. Hello, welcome to another episode of My Best 11 podcast. Today we are joined by a player who has been lucky enough to play for Luton twice and has also played for some very, very big clubs in Bristol, Fulham and QPR, amongst others. And he's currently managing Melton Mowbray's local team in Melton Town, which I was very, very pleased to hear about, into management. So I'll be interested to see how he's going there. Today we're joined by Tony Thorpe. How are you, Tony?
Yes, really good, guys.
And Marv, how are you, Marv? I know you've been looking forward to this one.
Andrew, it's the saying, try and try and try again until you succeed, comes to mind with Thorpe. 4 times we've attempted him, and finally we've got him on. But I will say he's one of my best friends in the game. We go back a long, long way, so I've got a lot of love for him. So, hiya, Forbes, you good?
Yeah, really good, Snoop. Doing well.
Excellent. So what we like to do is start off with formation, and then we go through the team. So obviously the best 11 players you've ever set foot on a pitch with. So we'll start off with formation and have a chat through formation and that type of thing. So what formation would you go for your best 11 team, Tony?
Yeah, so I'm quite a traditionalist, I think. So I've gone for a normal 4-4-2, which is kind of, throughout the years I played football, I generally played with 2 wingers, whereas nowadays you don't really see that much, especially at the top level. But no, I went for a traditional 4-4-2 for my lineup.
Excellent. And where would you fit in? So obviously you played most of your time as a striker. In the modern day game with the 3 or kind of 2 wide and 1 in the middle, where do you reckon you'd fit? Would you fit in the centre, or would you kind of play out and cutting inside? Where would you play?
Well, I haven't put myself in my best 11, but if I had, then I'd be pretty much just off a striker, I think. So kind of like a 4-1-1 formation.
Okay, so what I meant is in the modern day game, if you were still playing the Luton, played the formation of just 1 up front, or other clubs, where do you reckon you play?
Yeah, I'd always wanted to play off a striker, really, because I was never the quickest. So I'd kind of see myself as more of a number 10.
Bit of a playmaker, bit of a Dennis Bergkamp.
Yeah, try and get in little pocket holes, trying to pop it into the front, out wide, etc., etc. That's kind of my role, I think.
Excellent.
I agree. He was a clever player. He was a very clever, talented player. So I'd probably agree with that, actually. And that's some of the things which we don't always do, agree on things. All right, Paul.
No, I think we played in a different. I know that you spoke to Mick and Mike Newell and a few of the older guys, and they're kind of, let's say, late 80s, early 90s football, and we were kind of early 90s, late 2000, really. So a lot of formations, a lot of different things have changed over the years. But, you know, looking at the way we played, I think there would be a place in modern day football for how I played. How I actually played the game, because nowadays it's a lot of interchanging rather than just being a kind of structured 4-4-2.
Yeah, no, definitely. So goalkeepers, let's have a go. Was this hard to do, Tony?
Yeah, I didn't play with many good goalkeepers. They were all useless. No, that's not fair. I think.
No, I was going to say, try and give us a couple of clues before we actually say who it is, if that's okay.
So he played for Luton. And to be fair, I was at Luton at quite a few spells. And we had like Kelvin Davis, Jurgen Sommer when I first started, Alex Chamberlain. But I didn't get to play with those guys as much as this one. He came on loan, I think, originally from West Ham, and just hit it off straight away at Luton.
Yeah.
And we had a couple of really good seasons out of this goalkeeper. So he stood a lot for me.
You got it, Andrew?
Is it Foyer? Ian Foyer?
Yes, it is, yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say Andy Petterson.
No, funny enough, that's another goalkeeper that we had at Luton.
I used to live across the road from him. He was useless.
Yeah.
He wasn't that bad. He wasn't that bad. Listen, that's harsh.
He was always drunk, wasn't he?
He was. That's true. That's true.
Hey,
That's true. You just see him walking up and down the street.
Hold on a minute. Hold on a minute. Listen, he went to Cheltenham from us, didn't he? Did he go to Cheltenham?
Yeah, he did. Yeah,
he weren't bad actually. I remember scoring against him when he was at Charlton for Luton, believe it or not, long time ago, 96, I think, or 95. But yeah, he wasn't Andy. But no, I chose Ian because Marv played in front of him. He was very obviously 6'7", Marv, was he?
Yeah. Sorry, him?
6'7", yeah, he's a big boy.
6'7", yeah.
Yeah, he struck a ball okay. I thought he was quite brave. Took a lot of pressure off Marv, and the defenders at that time. And he was one of the crowd's favourites as well, Ian. I think the Luton fans absolutely loved him. And he had a spare at our place where he was kind of untouchable really for a couple of seasons. Even kept Kelvin Davis out, I think, at one point.
Yeah, he was. I spoke to him. He's going to be a future guest actually on the podcast. But like you said, one of the biggest things which stood out for me was that he was brave. I know he's big, 6'7", that helps with that size, but he used to really come flying out, and it was so intimidating probably for like strikers like yourself if you come out as a goalkeeper coming at you 100 miles an hour, especially the size that he was. And so he was very brave, but like you said, he saves some real big saves, had some big saves for us, some big games.
Yeah, I mean, he played in the season where we were by far the best team. Unfortunately, we just stumbled into the playoffs, and the rest is history. But we had a real strong team then, like you say yourself, Steve Davis, Grezza, and a few of the lads. But yeah, he was looking back at my career on regards goalkeepers. I'd obviously played with quite a few of them over 8 or 9 league clubs, but he stood out for me. So yeah, Ian Fuhr definitely deserves to be in my number one.
Excellent. So we'll move on to the defence. Right backs, left backs, whichever one you prefer, Tony.
Yeah, I'll start with right back. So this was an easy choice for me. Do you want me to give you a kind of a rough idea?
Did he love dyeing his hair blonde?
I don't know if I can't remember. I think he might have done actually.
He did, yeah, he did. He did.
As in kind of full-on albino white blonde, I think he was for a while.
He was.
Yeah, this was the easiest choice ever for me. I've played with some good fullbacks over the years, but Graham Alexander, for me, was a touch above the rest. Funny enough, you say that. Terry Wesley brought him in from Thorpe, I think, and he actually struggled, and the Luton fans didn't take to Grezza very well. We were not the strongest team at that time, Marv, were we, when Terry came in?
No, but funny enough, you saying that, when we had Grezza on, he remembers, because he signed the same time as Steve, and he remembers being ushered into the away team dressing room. And I think at the time you was in there with the likes of, some other players who weren't quite in the first team, and it knocked his confidence, he said, because he had played over 2 games for Scunthorpe, and coming there, a case where he's probably thinking, oh, maybe they don't fancy me, and maybe that. I think they said that, didn't they, Andrew? He said that he had to prove himself to obviously the supporters and the staff. So that's probably why he struggled a little bit.
Correct, Marv. I remember he really, if he looks back in his career, I wouldn't say Luton was one of the better clubs that he kind of performed at. It was more when he left Luton. But for me, we had two really good seasons out of Grezza, and by far the best right back I've ever played with. Technically, for a striker, when you've got your back to goal, you want good deliveries into the front, and he would never let you down. He was technically very good. and a really good defender. But yeah, that was quite an easy choice for me, Graham Alexander. Great player.
Yeah, fantastic. And he obviously went on to play for his country as well, playing for a number of times for Scotland and well known as a penalty taker. What would you say your record was like as a penalty taker, Tony? Do you still thrive on the penalties, or?
I did, yeah. Just going back to Greza quickly. I mean, I think he got 40 Scottish caps and made over 1,000 appearances in football.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not a bad player if you've got a record like that. You're right up there, and he deserves all the credit he gets. And he's obviously done really well in his managerial career as well. On regards penalties, I never missed for Luton.
How many take one?
I think I got 12 out of 12 for Luton, I think.
Wow, that's a cracking record.
And I missed one for Bristol City, and I think I missed one for Swindon as well, which I weren't that bothered about, to be fair.
What do you mean you wasn't that bothered about? That's not very nice, Forbes.
No, I was joking, Mark. But yeah, I missed two. I think I missed two in my career, but my proud record is Bristol City. I missed one, but obviously Luton, I didn't miss any for Luton's, which was great. That's
a cracking record. Marv, do you ever take penalties for Luton?
Yes, I scored in the mad game it was. We had played Sheffield United.
We're not talking about training.
Sheffield United, no, Sheffield United, because you can't train against Sheffield United. 4B, it's a proper game, you know. And we lost 6-3. We lost 6-3, and we had Carey would have got sent off, and there was me, Precy, Kerry Dixon, I think, Mitchell. There's some big players on there, and I'm thinking no one wanted to take the penalty. No one wanted to take penalty. So I said, no, I'll take it. And so I took it and scored. And so the next game, about 3 or 4 games down the line, we're playing Bristol Rovers in the FA Cup. And in the first 10 minutes, we got a penalty. So again, no one else wanted it. So I took up, but I missed it. The keeper saved it, shall I say. I call it a miss when you miss a target. I don't know what Thorpe, being a striker, Thorpe's probably sick. It's still a miss, Marv. It didn't go in, Marv. A miss is a miss. But for me, the keeper saved it. Not everyone makes a keeper save the ball. So after that, I didn't get to take him anymore. Gutted.
Marv, this ain't about you. It's about me. Yeah.
I knew he'd say that. I said to Andrew, I bet you, right, within, I thought it's come soon, actually, Andrew. It's come soon. He said it's going to be about him. I told you.
No, I'm only joking, Marv. I can't remember that game.
No, you weren't playing 4B. I think in the reserves then.
Definitely.
So left backs.
Yeah, had 2 spells at Luton. Obviously started he's a Luton lad, I think. Marv, me and Marv go back a long way with this guy, and we've had some great memories, great times with him. 6'3", went and played at the highest level. Not the quickest, but for me as a young lad coming through, I started on the left at Luton. So I had to put Mitchell Thomas in at left back. I just thought his experience for me as a young lad was priceless for me to have the career that I had, really.
And he loved playing those little 5-yard passes, didn't he? So I mean, at the end of the day, I think anyone who loves to play football would have someone like Mitchell in their team, because I mean, again, I weren't sure if he could kick the ball over 20 yards anyway. If he had the energy, his legs were strong enough. I mean,
it's quite funny actually, Marv, because Mitchell used to take not liberties, but Mitchell would take chances, very similar to yourself. Whereas you watch football now, 20 years beyond, they pass it out the back. They play little corner balls in the 6-yard box, 18-yard box. That was Mitchell 20 odd years ago when you used to get closed down high up the pitch. So he used to take those chances then, didn't he?
No, he did. It's true. It's true.
And he didn't care where he was or whether he was getting closed down. He would always want the ball. But for me, yeah, I thought Mitch was a real good, strong left back, and even left Luton and won the league with Burnley. So it just goes to show that he had such a good career at the highest level, and obviously with us and Burnley.
Tottenham, don't forget, Tottenham with David Pleat, West Ham, as well. So he's had a great career.
Yeah, for me, great career and a very intelligent footballer. And he was perfect for me because that's all I wanted to do, really, when I first started.
Definitely. The only person I will ask you about that isn't in there then is Matty Taylor.
I didn't play much with Matty. He was a young lad coming through when I was
On your second stint, that's what I was thinking. Your second stint, do you play with Matty Taylor?
Not in my second stint.
Already left by the time you came back second time around then?
Yeah, Matty wasn't in the same... listen, it's only opinion. We live in an opinionated game where some ex-players like me would rate certain players. Matt Taylor had a great career, absolutely fantastic. He wouldn't lace Mitchell's boots in my eyes. I know he played in the modern game and the Premier League for Portsmouth, etc., but not in the same league as Mitchell for me. More energy, quicker, definitely, but no, not for me.
You say second stint, but didn't you come on loan twice for Luton?
I did.
It's 4 times. It's 4 times basically you played for the club. So, I mean,
yeah, I think I did play with Matt. And by the way, I'm not saying he's not a good player.
No, we know that. Yeah,
very good player. Great left foot, great energy up and down. He was your modern day left back, kind of round about late 90s, early 2000s. So yeah, really good player. But for me, as a footballer, Mitch was edge in my team, and I played with Mickey Bell at Bristol City. And he was a very good left back. So, yeah. Really good left back. So, yeah, not for me, Matty, on this occasion, I'm afraid.
Oh, fair enough. Centre-backs, who caused... This has been quite an interesting one for you because obviously being a striker and who made it hard for you in training or then who also played very well on the pitch.
Yeah, if I can name centre-halves that I struggled against, they, funny enough, were the smallest ones. So I struggled personally against Eddie Howe. I struggled against Chris Perry on a couple of occasions. So anybody that was big, tall and aggressive, I felt like I had one over on them. But when I played against somebody my size, I normally struggled because they get quite tight, they get aggressive. They don't need to win headers against me. They weren't looking to physically beat me up, I suppose, in them days. But for me, I struggled against those kind of players rather than anybody big and tall and strong and aggressive. I found back in my career that I played well against them type of players.
Oh, interesting. And how was it playing against Marvin in training? Tough?
Yeah,
sorry to interrupt you there. Sorry to interrupt you there, but go on, I'm going for it. Go on, Forbes.
I was just about to say, Marv was the only centre-half I played with in my whole career who had a fantastic career at Luton where you didn't know what he was going to do. And that was, for me, just unbelievable as a centre-half. Normally, they used to put their foot for it. Marv would shake, drop a shoulder, to try a leg over in the 18-yard box. He'd slice to pass it out wide. He'd pop it into the middle. He just had so much ability for a centre-half.
I was going to say, I remember playing against Thorpe. It was not just in training. In training, I used to just really try and rough him up because I knew, obviously his quality. If he had his feet and he kept like doing his little jink and all that stuff, I knew I'd be in trouble. So I used to get really. I know he says he found physical players were easier, but I think because he knew me when we were in training, I'll be like hitting him because, "What are you doing, Marv? Marv?" So I knew once he started saying moaning, "What are you doing, Marv?" He wasn't on his game. So that was my advice. But I actually played against him when he was I think it was Bristol City.
Yeah, I scored.
A night game. I wasn't marking you then. You just that's one minute. The one time you got away from me. But I remember playing a night game it was as well. And like you just said there, I knew I could just do a trick or whatever. I could take liberties with you because he wasn't really going to really press and close me down. No. So I thought to myself, I can start our attacks with 4 people in their team. I can start our attacks.
Yeah, it's really difficult, Andrew, playing against players that you've played with in the past. I found that really difficult. So when you've had a few clubs, you obviously come across players that you've played against. And I found that sometimes really difficult because they knew your strengths and weaknesses. Very similar to Marv.
Is it again?
Yeah.
Very similar to yourself. You knew people's strengths and weaknesses.
So when of course.
You know somebody and they don't know how you play, you find it easier. But if somebody knows your kind of little niches of how you do things, I find that really tough. And when I've played against my ex-teammates in the past, I've probably struggled a little bit.
Interesting. So centre backs, then we digressed a little bit. Who have you gone for?
So I went with the left side. I went with Chris Coleman.
Oh wow, was that Bristol City?
Fulham,
No.
Oh, Fulham, of course.
Yeah, he was a Rolls Royce of a centre half. Never gave the ball away. Never ever looked like he was in a sweat. He played the game at his level at all times. Very, very similar to Marv. A bit more probably mobile than Marv, and probably a bit more, I don't know, probably a bit more aggressive than Marv in the terms of reading the game. But for me, just silky centre half. Honestly, Marv, he was just
man mountain. He was a man mountain.
He was 6 foot plus. He was quick. His legs were huge.
Massive, I know.
But he's such a great guy as well. You want to play for him. But Cookie, for me, as a left-sided centre-half, just breezed the game. He actually found it too easy when I was at Fulham, and it caught him out quite a bit at that level because you know what it's like, Marv. They have no respect at the lower level. When you start at the high level, they probably have a bit more respect for you. But at the lower level, he had like players from York and players like that running him into the ground, and he just found it probably a little bit too easy.
So you were there when Fulham were just taken over by Al Fayed. I was trying to work it out.
He was Keegan's first signing, wasn't you? Keegan's very first signing, I think.
No, I think he signed Chris before me from Blackburn for 2.5 million. And then he signed Paul Pescalito, and I think another big signing. I think I was like his third or fourth big signing at that level.
And what was that like, playing under Keegan at Fulham?
Yeah, Kevin, I've bumped into Kevin a few times before I retired, and he's a great guy. An okay manager, I think. You know, he's obviously managed at the very highest level. But for me, I played under better managers than Kevin. But he's such a great guy and a great inspiration in the dressing room. And I enjoyed my short spell at Fulham with him.
Was he like how he was at Newcastle? I presume he was for most of his career as a manager. It seemed like it was like attack. We'll score more goals than you.
Yeah, I remember us getting beat. I think we played Millwall at home, one of my first games. You know, he didn't take defeat lightly. He struggled that his team would get beat at that level of football. And that was the difference between him. He's always been at the highest level. So when you kind of drop down, he's obviously trying to put a real good, expensive team together, obviously without finances. And for me, he struggled, you know, in the terms of getting to grips with that level of football.
Interesting. Oh, interesting. And Chris Coleman was his Rolls Royce centre back. Whose goes next to Keegan's Rolls Royce?
This again was an easy decision. I played with a guy called Lewis Carey, who made 646 appearances for Bristol City. He's their all-time highest appearance maker. He actually beat a guy called Johnny Attio, has a stand named after him. So Lewis was very similar to Chris, not as silky, but he was aggressive. He was technically very, very good, read the game really well, and by far one of the best centre halves I've ever played with.
Interesting, because I mean, again, it's your 11. I mean, Steve Davis, would he be close? Would he have been close?
Yeah, Steve was close. I've played with some really good centre halves, Marv, but I just think Lewis. Yeah. You know, I played 4 years with him, and he's another player that was an 8 out of 10 every single week. You know what, like Marv, them ones that you a bit like a Gary Waddock. It wouldn't be a fan's favourite, but he'd give you everything. Well, Lewis was very similar. He was a 8 out of 10, and to make 646 appearances for one club. I don't know how many you got for Luton, but that was
nowhere near.
Years.
Yeah,
you know,
that's brilliant
career. And he's now academy coach at Southampton, doing really, really well. So he's on that managerial kind of ladder, and there's no reason why Lewis won't in the next couple of years. You know, you might see him at a lower level managing. Really good player.
Oh, excellent. Sounds interesting. So what we'll do is we'll pause it there, and we'll come back after a short ad break from our sponsors.
Thank you for listening to My Best 11 Pod. We are currently accepting applications for advertisement and sponsorships. You can reach us at My Best 11 Pod or mybest11pod@gmail.com. Thank you.
Excellent. So we're back for part 2 of Tony Thorpe's Best 11. So far, we've got Ian Foyer, Mitchell Thomas, Graham Alexander, Chris Coleman, and Lewis Carey. So we're moving across into midfield. Obviously, we'll start off on the wings. Tony, start off on right wing. Who have you gone for on right wing?
Yeah, so looking at my team, I've kind of picked 3 or 4 from Luton, three or four from, my old clubs, Bristol City, and then obviously a couple from QPR, which you'll know about in, further down the line. But I had to choose this guy, a guy called Scott Murray. Absolute flying winger for Bristol City. Made 300, 400 appearances for the club. Still works there now. What a player. For left foot, right foot. He was brilliant for me because you could pop it into a centre forward and you take a touch and reverse him in behind and he'd be gone. He was the quickest thing I'd ever seen. If I'd have played with Scotty all my career, I'd have finished on 400 goals. He was that good. He'd literally pick you out. He'd get in behind so often. A great lad, been a great servant to Bristol City Football Club. He had to be in my 11. And like I said, if he'd have played with me throughout my whole career, I'd have been on 400 goals. He was that good.
He was so, like you just said, he was so quick. I really was like amazed how quick he was because his legs, I mean, he's like lightning. He was lightning pace, didn't he? He was.
Can you remember when he was at school, Marv, and like, if you wasn't very quick, there was always somebody in the playground that was, and you used to kick it around the player and get to the other side. I've seen him once this at Ashton Gate where the guys gave him 15 yards and he's actually kicked it. So he's 15 yards away because he knows he's got pace.
Yeah.
He's actually kicked it around him, Marv, and got around the other side and crossed it. I've never seen anything like it. He was that quick. But it wasn't just his pace, Marv. He made intelligent runs.
Yeah, he did.
And I think he scored nearly, I think it was something like 80, 90 goals for Bristol over like a 10, 12, 13-year career. So, honestly, he was a dead cert for me. And I played with some good wingers as well. Berkovic was a really intelligent footballer, but he had no pace, Berkey. But lots of good right-hand side players. But, yeah, he was miles ahead of everybody else.
Oh, interesting. So, was he selfish?
Yes. Yeah. Who, Scott or me?
Yeah.
No, you are.
No, Scott. No, yeah, he was. He was selfish, Andrew. Yeah, he just had tunnel vision. So every time, I mean, he was brilliant for me, and I'm sure he'd speak. We really linked up really well together, and lots of teams knew that. So as long as they stopped the ball into me, we would stop the service into him. Because all I knew is if I got half a yard, I'd be reversing it in behind, and he'd be gone. So, most teams that we played at Ashton Gate would play a bit deeper, so there wasn't any space in behind for Scotty. But like I said, he could quite easily pick it up and run at you as well. But he got lots of goals, and he obviously put loads of goals on the plate for me as well. But honestly, we don't see wingers anymore in football. It's changed, but especially at the highest level. He was a proper old-fashioned winger that would get his feet on the pitch line and literally go after his fullback. And there's not many of them around anymore.
He's kit man, isn't he now, isn't it? Is he kit man?
Yeah,
kit man at Bristol. Yeah. I saw that.
That's a great memory. That's a great knowledge, Marv. That's real in-depth lower league knowledge, that is.
No, but it's this Twitter, isn't it? Twitter. When you're on Twitter, you see loads of different stuff going on from different people.
Yeah, he's got a job there for life. I think they want a testimonial for him for the next couple of years. He's been there quite a long time. Him and Lewis Carey have been there since early 90s. It's a long time, do you know what I mean? So
very long.
Yes, it is. So, left wing. Who you gone for on left side?
Right, I went for another Bristol City legend. I went for a guy called Brian Tinnion. Don't know if you'd know him.
Yeah, of course. Everyone knows. He scored at Liverpool that goal, didn't he?
Yeah. Brian Tinnion was... I've never seen... If I've got Mitchell and Brian on that left-hand side, right, and then Scotty would have a field day, please believe me, because none of them... But Brian Tinnion, for me and Marv spoke about it many a time, where if you play with really clever footballers, it makes your job easier. And for me, we had a telepathic understanding that whenever he got the ball, I would come in short and drop it in behind and vice versa. He was unbelievable. He had a left foot like I've never seen in my life. He could pick you out from 30 yards, 40 yards. He could drill it into you. And his work rate was immense. Even though he wasn't the quickest, we used to have him and a guy called Mickey Bell on the left. Mickey was really quick, but you just give it to Tins and he'd pick passes out all day long. He had an absolute wonder of a left foot.
I remember him because, like I said, his left foot was like unmovable. I mean, and he was so left-footed. I don't think he used his right, did he? But that's how good he was. He could manipulate the ball and move it so he was always in the correct position to use his left foot.
Yeah, I mean, they talk about players in this generation, as we've kind of alluded on, that football's changed. Tins couldn't sprint. He was fit. He'd win every cross-country pre-season. He was unbelievable. But sharpness and pace, he would never beat a man or anything like that. He'd just have half a yard and he'd pick you out. There's been some great players over the years, very similar to Tins. But what a left foot, what a player. I couldn't speak more highly of him. I had Brian on the left and Scotty on the right. I've got a real proud record at Bristol City. But without them two, Marv, I think I'd have really struggled. They were that good.
Right.
Yeah, I was looking up about Bristol City when I was doing some research and looking at the number of players that have played over 100 games. And you sit really highly, particularly that kind of 90s, late 90s era, and kind of that group of players. And it was really, really impressive, the goal scoring record as well. When you scroll through them, not the kind of players who played 5, 6, 10 games and been on loan or something like that, but played a decent number of games. It's incredible to see your record there. I didn't realise you had such great times there, and it kind of slipped by a lot of Luton fans that we know about. You moves to QPR, you moves to Fulham, but maybe Bristol City kind of got a bit lost on the way for us.
Yeah, I enjoyed my time in Bristol. I had 4 fantastic years there. I struggled to break into the team when I first got there. They got promoted into the Championship, and I don't think a young Tony Thorpe, who's not flavour of the month, back in the day, and Marv will tell you this, probably sulked a little bit. So instead of rolling my sleeves up and really having a go, I'd probably sulk a little bit and not give my all when I was a young boy. But my record at Bristol stands up to most. I think 62 goals in 120 games, and people forget that. And I always say to players playing at the lower level or even the highest level, it's always difficult, Marv, top strikers will tell you this, to move from club to club and still score a lot of goals. It's all right staying at one club and getting 50, 60 goals. To actually score 60-something goals at one club and then move on and get another 60 and then move on and get another 30, that's harder to do for me. So I'm quite proud of my record at Ashton Gate.
Who signed you there? Who was the manager, Bristol City?
John Ward originally, and then he got sacked after about 5 or 6 games.
Was that because he didn't play you?
No, he signed me and Eddie Akinbai on the same day.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So
did Eddie get involved in the game? Was he playing straight away? Did Eddie?
Yeah, he did. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
he's a big, strong boy, Addy. Technically not the greatest, but honestly, a man mountain. He'd run through brick walls. I played a few games, obviously, and then they got rid of him. And then Tony Pulis came in, which was a real bad time because he's from round the corner at Bristol Rovers. So the Bristol City fans didn't sit well with him. And then Danny Wilson came in, and obviously Danny did a great job, stabilised the club, and built quite a good young team. How did you
get on with Pulis?
No,
I didn't think I was in my head. I was thinking he probably didn't, but let me answer the question anyway. Why?
I bumped into Tony on a few occasions, and he's been quite complimentary of me. But as a footballer, I wasn't his type. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
Fair enough. So we'll move into central midfield.
Yeah, there's 2 players, both from Luton, that I've chose. One of them was, I couldn't leave this guy out at all because as a young lad coming into the first team when Marv, Mitchell, all Kerry Hughes, all these good players that have played at that level for a few years, well before me. Preece, for me, David Preece, Mini, as a young lad watching him and actually getting an opportunity to play a handful of games with him, I had to put him in. He was an absolute little genius. Honestly, he was like Brian Tinian, really, but he'd work. Marv will tell you this. Mini worked so hard, didn't he, Marv? He didn't care how big he was playing against. He'd go and compete. He'd go and get his tackles in. Whereas Tins really wasn't like that. He tried, Tins. Don't get me wrong. He'd put his effort in. Mini would run around all game, putting his foot in, trying to win his headers. He was like 5'7" when he Marv. He was only little.
It's tiny, yeah, Mini. Hence his name. Yeah.
Intelligent. When I watched him, I didn't realise how good he was until I actually played a few games with him. Marv saw a lot more of him than me, but he had to be in that 11.
Yeah, I mean, he makes my team. Like you said, he was a little genius, and like I think I've mentioned it before. He loved a Meg, didn't he? He loved a Meg, not Meg.
Yeah, I mean, Pleaty used to put him on every set piece because he literally would put it right where you wanted it. He was clever. He was just unbelievable for me. When I was 19, I used to watch. I didn't break into the first team that many times. And I used to watch Preece every week, even though I was, a more of an attacking kind of player. But until I actually made a few games, Mark, what a player he was. He had to be in there for me. Had to be in.
Yeah, did he direct you as a young player coming through? Obviously, he was coming towards the end of his career. Did he direct you where you should be running? Or how did it work in terms of its experience with you?
Yeah, Preece, we had a real tough school, Andrew. And I mean, Marv will tell you this, a proper tough school. You couldn't walk into the first team dressing room. And if you did, you'd get 13 lads staring at you, wondering why you've even walked in there. Whether you was bringing a pro a cup of tea, whether you're bringing them boots. The respect that you had for these players was immense. So it was only right for me to listen to players like that. And I wasn't very good at listening at all.
Still not. You still know.
No, probably not. But it was a tough school, Marv, wasn't it? Them Luton days, a proper tough school.
Yeah, it was. It was.
To break into the first team, you had to be something special to break into that team. I'm not saying I was, because I wasn't, but you had to be a good player because you'd get found out really quickly, Marv, wouldn't you?
I think the players, and it's no different really. I'm guessing today, I think players know players. And even though obviously some clubs spend a lot of money on strikers or whatever player, it's still the ownership comes when the players decide whether or not, if they've got if this player can play. It doesn't matter if you've cost 6 million or 600 grand. At the end of the day, you have a little bit of a keep ball session and the ball's bouncing off you, whatever. It's nerve wracking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What the hell what the hell have we brought here? What the hell? Do you know what I mean? So the players really do put you in a good esteem of where you are judged as a player.
I mean, I'm sure they do this now, but they used to test you, didn't they, Marv? Like in keep ball, stuff like that. And the answer to your original question, Andrew, is yes, Preece did help me. But what I'm trying to get at is a lot of the pros in the team at that time, if you wasn't good enough, you'd get found out really quickly. But if you was, they'd put their arm around the shoulder and they'd try and help you. All the players did, not just Preece. But yeah, tough school. They'd be drilling balls into you. You'd give the ball away 2 or 3 times and you'd know about it, wouldn't you, Marv?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a dying breed. Players now are obviously miles different compared to what they were like, in the 80s and 90s and even probably mid-90s. But for me, I learned the best way, which is get on with it, roll your sleeves up. And if you're part of this squad, you have to prove to us that you're good enough. And that's kind of how it was with it, Marv.
Yeah.
So who are you an apprentice to?
I was apprentice at Leicester.
Yep.
With some fantastic players there. And then I got released and David brought me straight to Luton at 18. I think I was 18 years old when I came to Luton. So, yeah, so I was an apprentice at Leicester under Brian Little and Alan Evans. Remember them, Marv?
Yeah. Villa, Aston Villa connection.
Yeah, John Gregory, Alan Evans and Brian Little, great guys.
So
really.
was you there? Was you there as a kid? From what age at Leicester?
Yeah, so right through from 8 right through to
8. I never knew that. 8 from 8.
being apprentice, and then obviously then getting released.
What was that like? What did they say? They just said we're not going to give you a pro, or you're too small, or what was the conversation?
I can always remember the first year as an apprentice, I did really well. And then the second year I picked up a bit of a bad ankle injury playing for the reserves. So I broke into the reserves. And Brian Little pulled me one day and he just said, unfortunately, we've got Julian Joachim, who was coming through. And, we're not going to take a chance on you at this time. It wasn't anything to do with your ability and stuff like that. You just hadn't seen enough. But funny enough, I was speaking to Marcus Bignett about 2 years ago, and he said that he was at a dinner with him. And one of the questions was, who have you ever let go in your football career that you regretted? And he actually came out and said, I let go a young lad called Tony Thorpe from Leicester. And he said which was a nice thing for him to say. And he said he went on and had a not bad career. It was nice of Brian to acknowledge me for that. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, that's nice. That's really nice.
But it was touch and go. It's like anything in them days, Marv. It was 50-50 really, wasn't it? Do you know what I mean? And you have a chance of moving on and doing something, or you went and found a job, I suppose.
I mean, again, not knocking, obviously, Brian Little, because it's all about opinions. But I remember when you first come to Luton, when obviously, and you know yourself, please, no idiot. He's not a fool. As soon as he because he knew every single league, he knew every single player. As soon as he probably heard that you had been released, bang, he literally got you there straight away. And within the first week, even the first day, I saw what ability you had, and I found it really, really hard how you didn't get anything at Leicester. And obviously, Pleaty thought the same thing, because hence why he went and got you there straight away, and the rest is history.
Yeah, David, you're spot on about David. Obviously, I owe all my career to David, full stop. That's as simple as that, really. I mean, to give me an opportunity, a young lad from Leicester, getting on a train on my own, coming down to Luton. I've never been to Luton before, and to pursue a career. I think he saw my best. When you're a first-year apprentice, I actually did really well. And I think he saw a lot of me in that year, and then he got sacked. And then obviously he decided to bring me in to see how I was. So I got lucky, I suppose.
I mean, again, not trying to dwell on it too long, but like you said, David was one of those ones. When I got signed as an apprentice, he used to come to nearly every single youth team game and that's a first team manager. And that's big now for me, because I think maybe people might say, well, managers haven't got the time now to do it. But realistically, if you want to make the time, I think you can always get to see your academy team at some point. And David was one of the biggest ones, in my opinion, who always went and watched the youth team whenever he could.
Yeah, David went to watch games every day, Marv, didn't he? Every day, wherever it was, whether it was Colchester, whether it's Hull, he would always go and watch a game. You know, his love for the football, and probably still is, was right up there. It's good times.
Oh, definitely. And this is quite an interesting one in terms of your love for your first club. And I know Miles a bit different because he came through Luton, always stayed at Luton. Do you wish you could ever got to play for Leicester? Or is it something which, and is it important? Obviously, you're from Leicester, but is it also important you kind of wish you could have gone back there and gone, do you know what, I can make it, I have made it, after they let you go?
No, not really. No, I was never one for looking back. Yeah, it's my home club. I think I got my own back on a little bit. Marv played in the game where we went to Filbert Street and we drew 1-1. Remember that, Marv?
Yeah.
When Lenny was manager, and I scored a really good goal. We ended up drawing 1-1. Very good goal. And I ended up scoring at Filbert Street in front of my family. That was more important to me than actually proving to Leicester that I was good enough to play. Because I've got to be honest with you, Andrew, at the time I probably wasn't good enough. But I have no regrets on my hometown club. But no, I have no regrets. I kind of call Luton's probably my first club. So that's going to be for me what I look back on when I'm grey and old. Probably right now, I think.
So that's who you look for in the press then? Every or on BBC or whatever, that's who you look for on Sky Sports on a Saturday?
Yeah, no, not just Luton. That'd be unfair for me to sit here and lie. I look at all my old clubs. I played for Luton for many years and had the best time of my life there. Played for 4 years at Bristol City. Couldn't, I enjoyed my time there. I had 2 fantastic years at Queen's Park Rangers. So they're the 3 clubs, really. And then obviously I still look at Fulham's results. I'd say they're the 4 clubs, really, that if I was to pick up a paper or pick the news on, they're the clubs that I'd be looking to, hopefully they'll do well. I want them clubs to do well.
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough. So other central midfielder next to Precy, you gone for a hard nut?
I have
a playmaker in Precy.
Probably a bit of a surprise to Marv. So I've played with a lot of great midfield players at these 3 or 4 clubs that I've just mentioned. But for me, Luton, this player's obviously well thought of at Luton Town Football Club. It's one of their most successful captains. Marv's really close friends with him. Kevin Nichols wouldn't even know that I'd put him in my team. But Nico, when I look back to, yesterday and today at some of the players I played with, Nico trained how he played, didn't he, Marv?
Yeah.
He never went on a pitch and played and gave you 100%. He trained like that. He literally trained like that. And do you know what? A lot of people don't give him credit for how good he was when he mocked. Technically, really smart. And looking at his successful time at Luton and I only had a year and a bit with him, he stood out for me. He got stuck in. He was aggressive, but he could really play. And I know that the Luton fans think very highly of him. And for me, he'll go down as an absolute legend at the club. He had to get in the team for me. I'm that right-hand side next to Precy. Spot on footballer.
It's good combination, actually, Nico and Precy. But like you said, I think a lot of people don't give Nico the credit of like how good a player he was. He was a real top player, like you said, and he trained literally how he played. I mean, 100% every single time.
I mean, I never always saw eye to eye with Nico when I first came to Luton. We speak now. I mean, it wasn't only last year, Marv. We had a bite to eat, didn't we? And he's a great lad. So much time for him. But I never always saw eye to eye with him, and he probably didn't always see eye to eye with me. I think we were quite strong characters in a dressing room. But for me, you know, I'd have to tip my hat off to him because not only how successful he's been, but people forget he was a talented footballer, a very talented young man. And if he hadn't have had his knee injuries, Marv, he would have gone and played a lot more years and got more recognition than he's already had for me.
Definitely. I agree.
So you've got in there Nichols, Coleman and Carey, obviously alongside others. Who do you have as captain?
My skipper would be Cookie, Chris Coleman. Yeah, Cookie was a good skipper, good leader. There's quite a few leaders on there. Nico would be close. But for me, it would be between the 3, really. I'd say it would be between Lewis, Cookie, and obviously Nico. But yeah, Chris Coleman for me was a proper skipper and a good leader.
Cookie? You keep saying Cookie. What's Cookie from?
That's his nickname.
Here's his nickname, Chris Coleman. We used to call him Cookie.
Where'd that come from?
God knows. I never asked.
Do you know what? I'm gonna throw a guess in there, but is it to do with the Cookie Monster?
It probably, yeah, because he looks like him.
That's what I think it is. It is.
Yeah.
The Cookie Monster on the what was that cereal? Oh, Sugar Puffs.
Honey, Sugar Puffs.
Yeah,
That's it.
Sugar Puffs. I think that's where it come from.
He's a big guy as well. Cookie. Keep calling him Cookie, but
that's where it comes from. Cookie. Sure, but... Yeah, that was his nickname. Yeah, Cookie.
Oh, excellent. So we're now moving to our strike force. Now, you've alluded you haven't picked yourself, but you are allowed to. Marv said you would.
Did he?
If there's one man who's going to pick himself, you said you was going to pick yourself to me yesterday.
No, I didn't.
Did you not? Oh, okay.
No.
All right.
No, I mean, if I had a choice to pick myself, this guy would be close to kind of mirroring what kind of player I was and what he was. So I'm going to go for Kevin Gallen at QPR.
Yeah.
And this for me because I played with some of the best strikers over the years. Lots of strikers. People like Steve Howard, obviously John Hartson, Kerry Dixon, Oaksey, Lee Peacock. Honestly, so many great centre forwards in the past. But for me, Kev Gallen when I went to QPR, he was probably in his, I was 30 and I think he was 30, I think he's the same age as me. So we're both kind of like in our kind of peak of our career. Kevin started really young at QPR, played at the highest level, so strong, technically really good, scored goals, good link-up play, Marv, could hold it up, really intelligent. He had to be up there for me. Really tough decision, but yeah, put Kevin ahead of me. He'd be happy with that.
He'd be delighted with that. He'd probably have a few things to say about it. Again, another person trying to hopefully to come on there at some point, but he comes from a big, long background of gallons. And I mean, it was in their family, wasn't it? A lot of players, brothers and stuff. And I think he was quite young and ended up obviously getting the benefit of being maybe one of the younger ones and coming through and learn a lot of those sort of players. So yeah, again, another ex-Luton player as well.
Yeah, top lad, real top player. I had some great times with Kevin, but you don't realise how good these players are until you actually physically play with them. Obviously, you hear a lot about Kevin, you know, with his younger days, playing at QPR with Les Ferdinand and players like that. But he was that good, Marv. He was that good. He was solid. He was solid. You know, he was pretty quick in his younger days as well, so he could get across the grass. Obviously, as you go older, you slow down. But all-round footballer for me, and a great lad. I had to put him in.
Oh, he's a good lad. So you've got Kevin Gallen in there, obviously QPR time. You play QPR amongst other stadiums. QPR's kind of, I always think it's a slightly bigger version, but very similar to Luton in terms of Kenilworth Road, in terms of the atmosphere at night games. Where would you say the best ground is you ever played at?
For atmosphere, or you mean?
For atmosphere, yeah, for atmosphere. And that can be kind of either an intimidation or on your side, I suppose.
Yeah, I remember playing at Millwall at 19. That was intimidating for me at the old ground. Again, I think Marv played in the game. I can't remember. I played at Millwall many a times in my career at the new end, but I've also played at the old one. I think Marv definitely would have played. As a young 19-year-old, that's the scariest I've ever been. Can you remember they used to have the two cages, Marv, as you was walking?
That's it.
And you used to get young kids, no older than 13, 14, shaking it, screaming at you, telling you what they're going to do to you and spitting at you. And it was absolutely vile. I was a 19-year-old myself thinking, oh my God, what is going on here? So intimidation, definitely not the new den. I'm sure that is now, but the old den was really, really intimidating. Atmosphere-wise, probably Stoke away. Great atmosphere at Stoke. Their supporters are always in high voice. But as grounds go, I played at most grounds throughout the Football League. I'd have to say Norwich was one of my favourites, Marv.
Yeah, you think?
Yeah, I don't know why. Not the biggest. I just liked it. Packed. The pitch was always nice back in the day.
It was.
Quite a friendly atmosphere, so you never really got any shit, to be fair. So yeah, I enjoyed playing at Norwich. I've never scored at Norwich either, but it's just one of them grounds I'm playing. Yeah,
I think it's because it's the middle of nowhere, and the only really people who will go to the game are the people Norwich supporters, because it's just like out there, isn't it? It's not near anywhere. So I mean, I don't know. I mean, going back to the Millwall thing, like you said, that's the big thing. I remember the cage as you walk out, and like you said, there was like they spat, they obviously abuse, and like again, it's generations of generations, and I think they're just set in their own ways, because like you mentioned, the 14-year-old kids. I mean, I can remember being there and getting abused and all sorts of stuff coming out, but you could just see just look into the crowd and you could see the different generations from granddad, dad, son, just like, and they're just you like abuse, and that's why it's. I mean, I think again, not wanting to digress and go away things, but like they talk about racial abuse. It's within the family. Once
of course, I agree.
And like I've spoken about it before when I had another podcast with Andrew. I don't blame obviously these young kids. Is because obviously they're older. It's just doing what they're taught. It's like if you have children, you train them how to walk, then they're just following what their parents are doing.
I remember turning around to Carey Hughes saying, there was like 10 and 11-year-olds giving me the worst abuse ever. And they were literally that close, Marv. That close to me. I'm trying to keep my head straight and they're shaking it and so on and so on. And I turned around to Carey and I think I said to him, where's their parents? He turned around to me and went, they don't need parents. They are the parents. I think that's what he said. That's what he said to me. They are the parents.
Well, they probably are. They probably are parents. They've probably got kids.
Yeah, you're right.
But no, intimidation, definitely Millwall. But played at some great grounds, better grounds than Norwich, I'm sure. But I just enjoyed playing at Norwich. Like I said, even though I never scored there. West Brom, Ashton Gate's a great place to play. There's so many. But I like the tight-knit grounds. I used to like playing at Cardiff, Union Park as well. So, yeah, lots of grounds that I've enjoyed playing at.
Awesome. So, striker, who's next to Kevin Gallen?
Yeah, this was the toughest for me. I had to go round and round in circles. I think I mentioned quite a few guys earlier. People like, we knew John Hartson was going to be an absolute dream of a centre-forward. Terry Dixon and players like that were coming to the end of their careers when I was starting. So, not anybody like that. I played with Chris Lumu, who was decent at Colchester, big, strong centre-forward. There's so many. But for me, I had to go for Paul Furlong, Marv.
Okay.
When I came to QPR, he was 35. I was 30. He was 35, 36. He looked like a 20-year-old. He's the strongest guy I've ever come across in training. He could leave one on you as well. He was never worried in training or in a game. Great finisher, could strike balls. He was so aggressive in the air. He could run. Marv, he was 35, 36. He was quick and an absolute proper professional. He's the best professional I've ever come across in my life.
Really?
He drank the right things. He looked after his body. He trained well. He worked hard. He was unbelievable. I could not speak more highly of Paul Furlong. Him and Kev Gallen up front were absolutely in different league.
And did he play for Luton as well? Did he come to Luton, Furlong?
Yeah, he did.
Did he?
For a season. Yeah, for a season or two.
And he played for
He could have been old, Marv.
He played for Luton, and I know he played for the yellow team as well because I remember playing against him down the road. He played for them as well.
He played for Watford. Yeah, he was at Chelsea, wasn't he? Watford.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know what he was like to play against, Marv, but he was unbelievable.
He was a handful.
Pop a ball into him, absolute handful, and literally he'd get hold of it and he'd have two players with him. He could get hold of it. He'd use his body well. He scored goals, Marv, as well.
Like you said, I mean, I don't think he wasn't dirty, but he'd leave one on you. But like he'd be aggressive and he'd compete and he'd battle. But he was a nice guy, a really nice guy as well.
Yeah,
when I've seen him,
great
really
professional.
Nice guy.
He would head up my 11, top centre forward. Like I said, I played with some really good guys, some that I've mentioned. But Paul, I had kind of 2 seasons with Paul. Second year got a bit injured, but he was just immense to play up front with.
And I know you played with them at Luton, but both him and Gannon both played for Luton, so that's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Both those two.
I mean, the sad thing is that Kevin and Paul came to Luton towards their end of their careers, so they wouldn't have been with us. Luton fans wouldn't sit there and say what great players Kevin and Paul were at Luton.
No, true. But like, I mean,
they recognised that they were top players back in the day, and I'm going back to 2003 to 2005. Which is when I left Luton. That's the year where Paul Furlong was literally untouchable as a centre forward. I mean, we got promoted that year. He was by far the best player in the league.
Well, and going back to what you just said about the fans not knowing, we spoke about it. I mean, you did come into a lot of stick from a certain section of the Luton fans for maybe things what went on at the club that maybe not everyone knew. Do you want to just elaborate a little bit more?
Yeah, I've spoke about it many times. For nothing's changed. We were in administration. I let myself down a little bit, but we was in administration at the time. We just had a really good season the year before. Me and Stevie Howard had scored. I think we scored 40 goals between us or something. And obviously, Joe Kinnear had got sacked, which was a shock to us, Marv, at that time, because we had a good season. We didn't quite make the playoffs, but relatively, we were building a good squad. Then Mike Newell came in, and then we went into administration. They pulled me in the office. I had a phone call from Gary Waddock that night, the night before, and he said, obviously, Ian's interested in you. What do you think? And I said, well, we've just gone into administration. So he said, yeah, it's 50 grand. So I turned around and went, listen, the fees ain't nothing to do with me. But, you know, what's your thoughts? And obviously Gary said that Ian's really keen. The next day, the administrators pulled me in and said that we've got to let you go for 50 grand. And I was like, really? And I was like, basically, Mick said, do you want to go? And I said, yeah, I do want to go. And that's literally how the story was. I think the thing that upset me was everyone felt that I went for money. I didn't go for money. That's the God's honest truth. I took a pay cut to go to QPR that year. Not all supporters know that, and that is the God's honest truth. Ian Holloway would tell you that. I took a big pay cut to go to QPR. I just thought it was the right time for me. I was 31, I think, next birthday. I just had a good year at Luton. And basically, I didn't realise how much upheaval it would be and what the response would have been when I left. And that's basically the truth of it.
What does it feel like to, obviously, a club you grew up at, went back 4 times? Does it hurt to hear some of those songs that you sing?
No, not really. I'm not one of these that worries about stuff like that. At the time, I went back, you wouldn't believe it, I went back for QPR and set Paul Furlong in the 94th minute. That didn't go down very well because we drew 1-1 and we got battered on the day. Luton beat us fair and square, but we ended up getting a point out of it. And I got absolutely pelters. Now, that was quite upsetting. But then over the years, it's been 17 years now since I left. So it's a long time, water under the bridge and all that. Look, there's a younger generation now that wouldn't even know who I was. So I've kind of forgot about it, really.
Oh, fair enough. And you'd so in terms of Luton, you say you still look back at the club and that type of thing. Obviously playing for some big clubs. Are you surprised by their demise that happened, or is it something? Obviously, you were there for a while. They went in and out of administration a few times while you were there. Was it something you just got used to as a player?
Yeah, I think we had a couple of spells of administration through the times that I was there. First time I was a young lad, so it didn't affect me as much. Second time was obviously when I left, and I'm sure they might have even had another one in between me being at Bristol. I'm not sure. I don't think players, unless it's affecting you financially, I don't think players take too much concern, Marv, do they really?
No, yeah, you're right.
Getting paid for months on end. At the lower level, that'll really hurt some of these guys that are paying mortgages and et cetera, and bills. But for me, at the time, I just loved my football that much that I never really thought about the impact it would have on the club. Probably didn't even understand it as much. And then on the second time, you know, I was worth more than 50 grand for sure. I'd just had such a good season and I was still only 30. But, you know, I was kind of half forced and half pushed. But I also made my decision myself and decided to leave.
And the future, and it was what it was. And you moved on and had some great times playing at QPR. And with Holloway, what is he like as a character?
Yeah, he's mad. Absolutely mad. We got our best years out of Ian. He's managing at Grimsby at the moment now. I don't think he needs to be. He's got such a love and passion for the game. But there was every time he came in the dressing room, he was a laugh a minute. But he was also a very, very good manager as well. Wanted things done properly, very structured, worked really hard on the training ground. He's definitely my top 3 managers of all time that I played under. I think I had 25. Somebody
25.
Wow.
5 managers. So he was by far, Ian was just a great guy, passion like you've never known, but really funny with it as well. And we just had the best 2 years. I had the best 2 years ever at QPR under his regime. He's an amazing.
So you say he's in the top 3. So that's our next question. Who is the manager who's going to lead this 11? What you've just put together? Yeah,
so I'd have Ian in my top 3, and I really enjoyed playing under Danny Wilson, ex-Luton. Danny was brilliant for me at Bristol City. He basically just sent me out there over 3 years that I played under him and just said, go and play. He never complicated anything with me. He knew what my character was like. He knew my attitude sometimes could have been better. My work rate definitely could have been better. So he was brilliant for me. He didn't put any pressure on me at all. We just said, go out and play. That was it for me. That was his team for me. He's brilliant for Bristol as a manager, and he's had a good career himself as a player and as a manager. But for me, it'd have to always be David Pleat for me, Marv. Always. He's 4 generations behind, but his knowledge in our time and how he wanted us, all the stuff that you see now in football, how it's moved on, is partly to do with managers like him.
Yeah.
Because they said back then when 80s football was very robust, Marv, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Then you went into the 90s football where obviously the tackle from behind and all that changed. And then you went into the kind of mid-90s where Pleaty was so knowledgeable and understood how to play from the back, doing things that we used to do. I mean, not at that level that Man City do it at now, but it's the same scenario, just probably players. But Pleaty did that 25 years ago, Marvin.
I know. Yeah, I agree.
And people wouldn't give him the credit for that, but it was managers like him that set the stall out for how football's played now. And that is it. From what I've seen of him as a coach, he did so many different things when I was young I'd never ever seen before.
And that just reminded me, brings a smile to my face, because I think you remember as well. A lot of the drills, we used to do a lot of different combination in passing drills, and so David would like speak and explain it. I mean, we wouldn't really do that many demos, would we? To be honest, and they go, right, get to the right, go around, and then like Michelin would be pushing you to the front because no one knew what did he just
and so me to the front, and I'd always get it wrong.
And then they go, come on, let's go forward, come on, play, and like he did it wrong. No, you're not listening. Come on.
Funny man. But he was hilarious. Just a one-off. I mean, like you said, some of the drills, Marv, that we did were just, you know, we didn't sometimes know what we were doing. So but he was that ahead of the game. In his mind, I knew what he wanted out of it, but he just didn't have the players to do it. I mean, we were good players, but he was just a different level. And it's such a shame he struggled a little bit at Spurs and Sheffield Wednesday and so on and so on, because I think we got the best out of him. I think you definitely would have got the best out of him.
Oh, definitely. I mean, again, he's a top. I mean, kept it. I mean, a lot of people say to me, "What was it like?" I mean, his pre-match game speech was very rarely about the opposition. It was always about what we could do, what we did well, and I think that's a lot of the game today is why some teams are beat before they even go out the dressing room, because they're talking about, if we were playing like for Man United against Man United, it wouldn't be like Giggs, Scholes, it wouldn't be talking about that. It'd be saying, well, look, this is what we can do because that's in our control. That's all what's in his control. The next door dressing room was never in his control. So
he was always
just spoke about our strengths.
Absolutely, Marv. Just quickly, he was very cute and clever. I remember, you know, when we said we had a tough school, I remember he put me on corners and I kicked 2 behind the goal. And he shouted at me, and I always remember this, and he shouted at me, and I was so shit scared to take the third one, because if I'd have took the third one and kicked it out of play, I would never have been on corners ever again. But he tested you as a player. That's what he did, didn't he?
Yeah.
He all the time, just to see how you react to how your character was. Would you fall and be weak, or are you quite a strong boy and you can take it? And he drilled me all the time, didn't he? All the time. And really clever.
And he could be ruthless as well. I don't think he was. I don't think he was there, but I remember the time. I can't remember his name, the player now, but he's a young lad, young apprentice, or just turned pro. He'd been given pro, and David Pleat had just come back now for the second time for his second stint at the club, and he's in the dressing room addressing all the players, and he said, "Look, I don't know what's gone on before, but the slate's clean. Everyone here now is going to get a fair crack at the whip to claim a shirt." So he's turned around and going, right, hands up, who needs boots? And a couple of people put their hands up and need boots. And there's a young pro, I can't remember his name now, what he's like, and he goes, no, you put your hand down, you don't need boots, I'll speak to you later. That was him gone. That meant he was gone.
Yeah, that young player would have was finished that day on.
Put your hand down, you don't need boots, I'll speak to you later. Gone.
But he did test you. He was very good. He'd test you mentally. He'd throw things at you, and he was just a cute man and very clever. I owe all my football career to obviously David. Otherwise, I wouldn't have enjoyed it as much as I did.
And like you said, he liked cute, he liked clever players, and I know I worked him, obviously not worked him out, but obviously I got to know him quite a lot. Cause obviously I was there from a kid, and I knew exactly how he used to come for people and test you, like you said. And I remember going, I was at Electrolux, I think it was Electrolux. We had where we trained, and the bathrooms, and I don't know if he was there. Remember Tony Adcock, the player Tony Adcock?
Yeah, I do know Tony. Yeah,
Tony.
Wow.
So Tony was a centre forward. He was there, and so I'd gone into the bathroom to have a piss, and like. So David's come in, and I know David Pleat's come in, obviously, got into the cubicle to do a number 2, obviously. And so literally Addy's come in, Tony Adcock's come in. And so I'm having no words, and he can hear this noise of someone like on the toilet. And he's like, he's gone to me, who's in there? And I've just gone, like, shrugged my shoulders, sort of thing, and he David Pitt knows that I know he's in there, and so he can. He's gone, go on, son, get it out. So this is Adcock, this is David Adcock, and so I've gone, who's in there? He's gone, I don't know, but they're struggling. Go on, son, get it out. He said. And next thing, the toilet flushes, right? And this is the best thing. What David Pitt was like, the toilet flushes, the door opens. And out comes Bleaty. Tony Adcock's face is just bright red, embarrassment. And Bleaty's gone to me, clever Johnson, clever. Like, cause he knew that I knew he was in there, but I didn't say nothing.
Clever, yeah, he was good. I remember him, quickly before I go, I remember we played Forest away, and he played me on the left, and I was not having a good time, so he should have brought me off, but he didn't bring me off. He put me on the right against Stuart Pearce, knowing damn going to have just as hard time against him as I did in the first half. And I always remember it. Piercy kicked me up and down. I was only 9, and he did it on purpose. But even like making my debut at Newcastle, he never told me till 5-2 when we walked out in St James's Park, the pitch, because I wasn't in the team the day before.
Right.
He came up and he went, "You're playing." So he took all that pressure away from me the night before. No, I might have been nervous, I might have been this, and I did that. And he went, "You're playing." At 5-2, I didn't have time to get nervous, Mark. Do you know what I mean?
That's to score that great goal.
Management, yeah, really good management from Fleety. He was a good guy.
So, that moves in now to our final question. Your most memorable Luton game and why?
Well, all my hat-tricks for Luton are memorable, but I'd have to say the game would have to be the first one, which I've just mentioned, which is Newcastle away in 1994. It was a long time ago now. Yeah, I'd have to say the first goal that kind of not put me on the map, but just kind of, I knew I could score at that level, and I knew I could compete at that level. I just needed more games and nurturing a little bit more. So I'd have to say most memorable game would be definitely the Newcastle FA Cup game, 1-1.
Oh, excellent.
A cracking goal that was as well.
It was.
Finish. Did
you play in that, Mark?
No, I didn't play in that one, no. That's why, I think that's where you played.
Tumble and Peaky at the back.
Huh?
Was it Tumble and Peaky?
Tumble and Peaky, yeah. Tumble and Peaky. I mean, I don't know if I went to the game, if I even come to the game. I don't think I even come to the game. I don't think I did, because I heard that you scored, and then I saw
you mentioned a great point earlier about Pleaty. I always remember in the dressing room that he never won. They were top of the Prem, and we were struggling in the first division, and they were top of the Prem, absolutely steamrolling everybody. And Pleaty never once spoke about any of their players. I always remember it. He literally spoke about us, what we could do, and how we could affect them if we played our football, and we did.
Yeah.
We got to them home, battered them at home.
Is that the game Johnny scored? Was it live on Sky? and Oaksy. Was it Oaksy?
Oaksy and John, yeah.
Oaksy and John, yeah.
Yeah.
It was, do you reckon Keegan remembered you from that game?
Yeah, I mean, Kevin...
Did he ever mention it when you went to Fulham?
Me. Yeah, of course. We had a few chats about it back in the day and we giggled about it. But we played really well at St James's, but we absolutely battered them at home. I don't know if you remember the game, but the lads were brilliant at home. We just absolutely outpassed them. We beat them fair and square 2-0. But yeah, if we hadn't got a draw maybe at St James's, it would have been another story. But yeah, great memories, great evenings at Kenilworth Road. They were.
I was behind the Kenilworth. I remember watching it. It was absolutely sensational finish. And I've always said that it's the hardest I've ever seen a ball hit was when Peter Beardsley walloped the post in that game. It's honestly the hardest. And I reckon the post is still shaking now. It was so hard. He
was so close, Andy, because he came to Fulham when I was there. Kevin had brought him in, which wasn't great really for me because he brought him in to play him. He was 35, Peter, coming to the end of his career. He was one of my favourite players of all time, Peter. And we both scored in the same game. I think we beat Carlisle 5-0, and we both scored. That's kind of one of my kind of really big memories, that he was a hero of mine. I played with him and scored. But he was close to getting in the team as well because Peter...
I was going to say that. I would have to have him in my team. If I played with Peter Beardsley, he would be in my team. Wow. Yeah,
I got Kevin in there. Kevin's just better looking than him, so that's why Kevin's. But no, it's Peter definitely was close, but obviously I've got to put players in that I've played a bit more longer with. I only played a couple of games with Peter.
And Andrew mentioned it earlier on. You're doing a little bit of management now. So just for our listeners, just what are you up to now? What are you doing now?
Andrew's obviously read something. I left Melton about 3 years ago now.
Oh, apologies.
Yeah, no, I think it's still there. Someone's kept it on. I left Melton. I went into a bit of management. I found that really tough. At the level, step 7 was the level. Players not turning up for training, players not turning up for matches, not eating the right things, not drinking the right... I just found the whole level of it with where I came from. I struggled to not understand why players couldn't do the same as what I did, but it wasn't their fault. It was my fault. So I had to adapt to that and I didn't do very well, but I enjoyed it. But it's not something that I'd ever go back into now, management.
Oh, fair enough. And what are you up to these days then?
Yeah, so I work for I'm business development manager, and I have been for 2 years for a company called ATA. So they're engineering specialists, not far from where I live. Great company to work for. Great guys, really good recruiters. I've been around a long time, got some great staff, great management. And I've been there a couple of years now. So that's what I do now for a living.
Excellent. And we'd like to finish off and give you a chance to speak to our fans. Is there any messages you want to give to any fans of any of the clubs you play for? I mean, you mentioned quite a lot about Bristol and QPR and Luton, but any fans at all you want to leave a final message to?
Yeah, I think all 3 or 4 clubs that I've played for, just like I do most years on Twitter or wherever it is, Facebook, just wish them all the best. It's been a real tough time, as we're all well aware with COVID in the last 7 or 8 months. So for me, just for all supporters to stay healthy, hopefully get all supporters back in the stadiums again, which is what we want. We've just seen Luton have their first 2,000 supporters the other week against Norwich.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure Luton fans and all fans, Fulham, QPR, and all fans all over the country just can't wait to start filling stadiums again. So for me, just stay healthy, everybody. That's what it's all about.
Excellent, Forbes. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. All right, awesome. So thank you very much. And that was Tony Thorpe's My Best 11. Thank you, Tony.